like Saudi Arabia and convoy their own stuff. So I think there's a reasonable concern here that the Chinese are going to get increasingly belligerent because the Chinese needs 3 times the energy that the Japanese need, and they need it at a lower price in order to function. And if this just stacks on all the other problems that are boiling up within the Chinese system, that's a regime killer. So I can see a very real risk for an energy tinged conflict between China and its Asian neighbors. In the Persian Gulf, yeah, I mean, there's always the risk in the Persian Gulf that something's going to go horribly wrong. But in an environment where energy prices are high and rising and volatile, I can see a lot of countries who have the ability to stick their fingers into the Persian Gulf region to take more aggressive actions with the locals in order to supply supplies for themselves. It's a short list: Japan, Britain, France, Turkey, and with a very small number of vessels, China. So I can see a new scramble for resources in that area, and all of these countries are going to enjoy their time in the Middle East just as much as the United States did. In all of this, they will, however, all of them be attempting to partner with the Saudis, because the Saudis produce significantly more crude than the Iranians do. They're much easier to deal with. They can export either to the Persian Gulf or to the Red Sea. And so there's more flexibility there. And so Iran will once again be in the role of spoiler. It's just not with the United States being on the other side of the table.
Thank you. Are we about to see a boon time for coal after an extended period of slackening demand and lowering prices?
Yes-ish, not in the United States. Coal is not cost competitive with US shale gas. Even though we've increased our demand for shale gas by 50% in the last 12 years, and we're going through price discovery for the first time in a while right now. That's one of the reasons why prices are ticking up. Coal is just not competitive with that in the long term, especially if we have a crude export ban. So I don't expect that to happen here. Everywhere else, though, yeah. Coal is something that's local. Now, this is something that's difficult to trade, because if the coal is produced locally and it's consumed locally, there's only so many places that capital can get in there, especially if it's from the outside. And the country that had the biggest reputation for playing in international coal was Russia, and that's probably not much of an option unless you're in China these days. And if that you're competing for rail space between coal and oil, you can only have one that you can surge. But yes, I do see that becoming a premier feedstock for most countries, especially in Europe, moving forward.
All right. I think you've addressed some of this in your discussions about the sort of long lead times to bring projects online.
Sure.
But what about what does the future hold for places like Alaska's conventional oil deposits, Southeast Asian energy projects? There's also another question here about Papua New Guinea's LNG. Other questions about LNG projects more broadly. How will these sort of fare in the coming years?
It's going to be a bit of a mess. We're seeing a breakdown for the global system, and that makes it difficult to get companies and investments from one place to another, especially if you're going into a zone that has a reputation for being riskier. So let me just kind of go down that list. So Alaska first. I certainly see us putting some more effort in Alaska, and historically, Alaska has had a carve out for the oil export ban, and almost all of the Alaskan crude doesn't come to the mainland, lower 48, it goes to Japan. So I can see some version of that coming back. Just keep in mind that the Alaskan projects have been declining for so long because they've gotten so expensive. Now, in a $200 price environment in Asia, a lot of that's water under the bridge. So I can definitely see a resurgence. Same basic logic holds true for Southeast Asia. When you're looking at, say, the Malaysian operators, the Thai operators, even the Indonesian operators, they're better, significantly better than the Russian operators. And they're also, as a rule, easier to get along with. So as long as Southeast Asia doesn't have a broad scale conflict, I can see companies like Exxon and Shell and Chevron, BP, that have now withdrawn from Russia, relocating a lot of that technical work and employment levels to Southeast Asia. It's not going to generate all that much more crude. Southeast Asia writ large is kind of even with imports versus exports. So you might be able to get another million, another 2 million out, but you're talking over at least a half a decade, probably closer to a full decade. But Australia, 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 highest operating costs in the world for LNG projects. And no one is going to care anymore because the competition is just gone. So the Northwest Shelf, the Gorgon field, all that good stuff, I can see a huge surge in interest back in Oz. And it's like, what is it? I want to say it was like 120. Trying to think what the price was for the natural gas, the LNG that comes out of that. It's something like 6 times what it is in the United States for production, much less for any profit. But in the world we're going into in East Asia, it's still going to be necessary. Persian Gulf, probably going to be capped, because as that situation gets more and more dicey from a security point of view, it's really difficult to see a lot more LNG investment going in. So I think Qatar's given us everything they can. Everyone's going to take a second look at Latin America. And I could see Trinidad and Tobago at least stabilizing their declines. Same goes for Angola. The operating environment there offshore and the deep offshore has been very difficult. They peaked at about 2 million barrels a day, and then they've been steadily dropping since. I see that coming back. But of course, the single biggest player in LNG is going to be the United States, because you will be able to play. LNG is not covered by the omnibus bill from 2015, so Biden cannot shut it down. So I can certainly see American investors investing more and more in LNG liquefaction in the United States in order to take advantage of the arbitrage to get to Europe, for example. Just keep in mind that liquefaction takes a lot longer to build out than regas